2.5 years ago, a 17-year-old San Antonio teen went on a bike ride and never made it back home. Days later, a mother's worst nightmare became reality, and his body was found inside a burnt vehicle.
My son did not deserve if they did whatever they did to him. You messed with the wrong kid.
And now, Ana Maria Carpio is making sure all those involved get punished to the full extent of the law. This is Texas Crime Stories, a mother's fight for justice.
17-year-old Sebastian Eduardo Carpio was your average teenager. He went to high school at IDEA, was a successful student athlete, and dreamed of becoming a mechanical engineer. Here's how his mother, Ana Maria Carpio, describes her only child.
He was everything to me, kind, lovable, the light of every room that he entered.
A nightmare would begin for Ana Maria on September 18th, 2020. Sebastian told his mother he was going for a bike ride and would be back by the time she got home from the grocery store. But when Ana Maria got home, Sebastian wasn't there.
My gut feeling, told me that this is not right. That's not like him.
She went out looking for him, called friends, even his coach, but nothing. Around 11 that night, she called police to report him missing. All police were able to find out was that Sebastian was last seen riding his bike in the 5500 block of Burgett Farm on the west side of San Antonio. His bike was also found at a home not far from that location. But Sebastian was nowhere to be found.
2 days later, Bexar County deputies get a call that a stolen vehicle was on fire, and inside, firefighters found a body. It would be another 3 days later that Ana Maria got the call that the body found inside was Sebastian.
A big break in the investigation came 10 days later when a 16-year-old would turn himself in and reveal he was the one who killed Sebastian. It would be 2 years before the story of what happened to Sebastian was revealed, as that teen was now facing a hearing that would either release him from jail on probation or send him to adult prison.
News,
weather,
mental health,
true crime,
and all things San Antonio.
KSAT has a podcast for everyone with a local twist.
Tune in daily for the day's top stories on KSAT News Now.
Or learn more about South Texas weather phenomena with Whatever the Weather.
Deep dive into mystery with true Texas crime stories that happen right here in our own backyard.
And count on the KSAT Explains team to answer some big questions about San Antonio.
Plus, our newest edition,
Living Out Loud, making mental health easier to tackle in San Antonio.
Find us anywhere that you get your podcast.
Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
or watch the video versions on our KSAT YouTube page.
Remember to subscribe there too.
So the name of that 16-year-old Lee is Edgar de la Cruz. He was 16 when he turned himself in, and he was given a 25-year sentence. But because he was a juvenile, we didn't know his name. We didn't know the details of what happened technically to Sebastian until that hearing. And this hearing is called a transfer release hearing.
So what exactly does that mean?
So this is for juveniles mostly. If they're about to age out of juvenile detention, this hearing will determine whether they've had enough rehabilitation that they'd be able to go out and finish their sentence on probation or be transferred into adult prison. And this was something Ana Maria did not want to happen. She was already upset that he got only 25 years, and she did not want him to be released on probation because she felt at that time he'd only served 11 months. She didn't think 11 months was enough. So she went on this whole thing. She had a petition out. She had victim impact statements from everybody that knew Sebastian.
She was reaching out to news stations too to talk about this.
She made sure this was covered because she was going to do everything she could to make sure that Edgar de la Cruz didn't get out of jail.
I mean, I understand where she's coming from. 11 months after her only child was killed. What mom feels like that's going to ever be enough?
Yeah, you talk to her and you just feel for her because she's obviously still grieving, and it's only been a few years, and also trying to fight the justice system and make sure things are taken care of and that the people who did this to her son aren't out. I want to talk a little bit more about Edgar de la Cruz because during this hearing, this is the first time we see him. It's the first time we know more about him and what actually happened to Sebastian. So in testimony, it was revealed that de la Cruz pointed a gun at Carpio, thinking it was unloaded and pulled the trigger, killing him.
I mean, let's go back to gun basics 101. If you're going to be holding a firearm, you should, one, know if it's loaded, and two, never point it at someone unless you're prepared for the outcome of that.
I also don't believe this testimony completely because we also find out a little more about Edgar's background. And Edgar it was revealed that he admitted to years of drug use. He said he was been using drugs since he was like in elementary school, and hard drugs. He had violent behavior. And he also had ties to a Mexican cartel through his uncle and was selling drugs for his uncle. So I have a feeling this was more than just like, let me point a gun jokingly. I think it was more like an intimidation thing. And maybe it did accidentally go off, but I think he was messing with Sebastian, not jokingly, maybe to intimidate him.
Right. It's what we hear Chief McManus talk about all the time, the risky behavior. I mean, this guy fits the bill to a T. He's in with a drug cartel. He's out using drugs. He has a firearm as a 16-year-old. A 16-year-old should have access to a car, maybe if they get their driver's license. You shouldn't have access to a gun.
Yeah, and we also find out that after he shoots Sebastian, he carjacks a person, steals that vehicle, puts Sebastian in it, drives it out into western Bexar County in the outskirts, lights it on fire, and leaves. That's not normal teen behavior.
No, I would think if it was a complete and utter accident, yeah, of course you're freaking out, but you call somebody, you call the police, oh my God, this just happened. And then you go from there if this really was an accident.
Exactly. And so they had Alana Bennett. She is a Texas Juvenile Justice Department court liaison go on the stand during this hearing. And all the evaluations and all the therapy, she kind of gives a summary to the court of what's been happening the past 11 months that he's been in custody. And this is what she says on the stand.
He shared that his uncle told him stories of how people get rid of bodies in Mexico and for the cartel, which gave him the idea of how to not get caught after shooting Sebastian.
Wow. I mean, of course, children, because a 16-year-old is still a child, are going to be susceptible to what their elders are telling them, people that they look up to. But, I mean, his uncle to be describing something like that, that's wild.
Yeah, and I almost feel for him, too, because he is a child, and I don't think he got the proper upbringing he should have had and led to the behaviors that he was doing.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I can't even put my mind in that mindset. I can't put myself there at all.
So during the transfer release hearing, De La Cruz said that after 11 months of rehabilitation, this is what his defense was saying, that Edgar was a changed person and with strict conditions, he could be on parole. And an uncle of his, not the uncle that we previously talked about, this was on the other side of his family who doesn't live in San Antonio, was like, I will take him in. He can come live with me. He will work for me because he had his own business. We have strict rules in my house. He will follow whatever he has to follow. If he's given the probation, I will be his guardian.
I mean, that's great and good and all, but he spent not even a whole year behind bars for killing someone in cold blood.
To me, I was thinking, that's great, Uncle, but kind of where were you before when he obviously needed some better guidance?
Right. Exactly. Why now?
Why now? Exactly. So I don't think it was enough, and it wasn't enough for the judge either. She denied that request, and he was sent to adult prison, but he gets to become eligible for parole in 12 years. So Anna has to kind of keep going back and revisiting this case and making sure he stays in jail, because she is like, he's going to serve those 25 years. He's not getting out in 12. I will go to the parole board every year if I have to persuade them not to let him out.
I mean, even if he does serve that full 25-year sentence, he's still a young enough person getting out.
Exactly.
That if he is truthfully changed, if he is really rehabilitated, he can still live a long, healthy, productive life where he's adding more to society. I get he doesn't want to lose those 25 years, but her child lost his whole life. So I don't really think 25 years is too much to ask for.
Yeah, and if you think of it, he was 19. He'll be 20 this year. Edgar de la Cruz, get 25 years. He's going to be in his 40s if he serves the entire time frame. And yeah, he still has an opportunity to live a life.
Yeah, people in their 40s can make whole new career changes and whole new life changes. Go do that.
I will say, as far as Ana Maria, having numerous conversations with her, I see her often. She is a strong mother. She is fighting to keep her son's name alive. She is an advocate. She wants to make sure other families know they have support if they have victims of gun violence. And I admire her so much. She stands there so strongly and does things and faces people that no mother should have to face or go through. So I got to speak to Ana Maria after this hearing, and this was her reaction to the judge's decision.
I will never get Sebastian back, and 25 years that this individual will serve in the adult prison will never be enough for me. I will have to deal with him again in 12 years when he completes half of his sentence.
That's heartbreaking. I mean, of course, it's never going to be enough. Her only child is gone. And then, this brings back, we've talked to so many parents who grieve, and we've talked to so many people who grieve, who have lost someone in a horrific way. There is no word for a parent who loses a child. You can have a widow if you lose your spouse. You can be an orphan if you lose your parents. What do you call someone who loses their child? There's not a word for it because it's not something that should happen. It's unimaginable. So of course she feels like it's not enough.
Yeah, and every year she still celebrates his birthday. I know the year when he turned 19, they had a car parade for him. This was during the pandemic when this happens, and car parades were a thing for birthdays. And every time I see her, if it's at the courthouse or wherever, she has the button on with Sebastian on it. And you could tell this kid had an impact on a lot of the people he knew, from his coaches to his classmates to his teachers, neighbors, friends. They all just describe what a wonderful person he was, and we're just saddened that he couldn't contribute more in his life.
Yeah, he couldn't live up to his potential because that was cut short by another person.
Yeah, and if you think about it, usually we hear of some violence like this, it's both kids kind of in trouble all the time. But he was obviously a great kid. Ana was raising him by herself. He had great guidance. He wanted to be a mechanical engineer. He had big dreams, and they were cut short. But Ana continues to fight for justice, and there's actually more people involved in this case that she is hoping SAPD has yet to charge them with anything they were involved. Edgar de la Cruz was not by himself that day. He had help disposing of the body, carjacking. But those individuals, one, haven't been named, at least by police, and second, I don't think have faced any charges relating to the case.
So I imagine she's kind of the driving force trying to get it to change.
Yeah, just days ago I saw her at the courthouse because she was listening in on some hearings to see if this would develop into anything. So she's still very actively fighting for justice for her son, and this is kind of how she wants his tragedy to be remembered as.
I ask that my Sebastian's case serve as a good purpose for those families that are victims of aggravated robberies, of murders, to not give up and to fight for justice, to fight for what is right for their victim, for their loved one. It took a lot of energy, a lot of strength from the beginning, and I've been consumed through working my Sebastian's case. But if you don't give up, God will hear our prayers.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure that what she has to say, it rings true with so many parents, or family members, not even just parents, family members who've lost someone to something violent like this, whether it be a murder or an aggravated robbery, something like that. I think it must be hard to fight every day, but what she said is true. You have to keep fighting. You have to keep pushing for it, because who else is going to do it?
Yeah, you are your child's advocate. And no matter what age they are, you will always be. And I hope one day she is able to find some peace with it all. And but Sebastian's case will never be forgotten. Thanks for joining us. We will be back soon with another episode of Texas Crime Stories.